I'm Rob.
I'm John.
And this is the Mint One podcast,
where we talk all things NFTs and the rise of blockchain gaming.
So John, this week, Twitter has been alight.
They have. There's been Sudoswap, CC0's, all sorts of big news. Let's dive right into it.
Right, what episode is this? 35.
34.
35? No.
34.
No. No, it's 35. You're wrong.
Am I wrong? Oh,
Brian Trunzo was 34.
He was 34, you're right.
Good start. Strong start. I like that. Also, I mean, this is like the end of a podcast because we're just going off on a complete random tangent, but uBlock Origin has blocked 617 things on this website since we started this call like 10 minutes ago. What is Riverside up to? What are they mining me for?
Strange. We're big fans of the platform in general.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, look, for anyone that doesn't know, last week we had we as a group didn't. I personally had a technological issue where my office got haunted and I had a power surge, probably because of the heat, and I disconnected in the middle of the call, and then the upload cancelled, and I was just like, we've lost half this interview with Brian, and Riverside was just like, no, don't worry, calm down, I got you. And got us, it did.
No, in fairness, I was shocked when I went to download all the clips, and they were all there. The audio was there, video was there, didn't lose anything at all. So, yeah,
crazy. Very impressed.
Big thumbs up for Riverside. But let's just get straight into the topic, shall we? So,
let's do it. There's a lot to talk about.
There's been, I think, two main topics that have floated around the NFT Twitter, let's say, in this past week. One of which is Sudoswap, which is a brand new marketplace, effectively, which has said, hey, forget about creator royalties. Our marketplace doesn't have any. You pay a 0.5% fee on every transaction, which just goes to Sudoswap, and that's the only fee you pay. So NFT creators will get no royalties at all for any of their pieces that are sold on the secondary market. Now, that has had an interesting response across the crypto space. New, pretty much every personality you can think of has come out most people have come out against it, but with a variety of different responses, shall we call it. So one of the leading ones was People, of course, who, everyone listening to this podcast don't know who People is, but I would imagine for a lot of people outside of Web3 who don't really know what NFTs are about, People is likely to be the only name that they know, being as he sold the most expensive NFT in history up to this point. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to read out his tweet verbatim on the topic. He did a lot of follow-up tweets, but I think the first one is the most important here. He said, and I quote, "I think the creator royalty argument is actually a lot simpler than people make it out to be. There is zero way to force royalties technologically, so creators will have to build a collector base that want to honor these royalties. It's really that simple." I mean, he goes on to talk about how he's actually in support of royalties, but, it's a technological problem, etc., etc. But we talked about this briefly over Discord, but I pretty much just agree with his point of view. I think, yes, there is technically no way to prevent what marketplaces like Sudoswap are doing. So I think the question is one of how the fans of a creator value the people behind that collection. I think if you're building a tight-knit community that really wants to support you and your art, then sure, I think some of your community may be more than happy to pay these creator fees. But for example, if it's a blockchain game, then I don't know. I think some creators, if given the option to pay no creator royalties, would probably take it.
It's a tricky one. So I think people are looking at the problem in the wrong way. So I agree. For the record, I agree with what people are saying. Up to the point of saying it's not an issue with technology and you can't technologically force it. I think you probably can't perfectly, but there's what system's perfect without being gamed in some way or another? I don't think that's the metric, but I think we can still improve. And I'm being a bit facetious when I say this, but it's like saying we can't stop people from dying medically, so we shouldn't bother doing anything. Like, don't worry about it. Like, we can still improve the situation and we can still ensure royalties better than we currently are. And I think we can do more. That said, I think creators definitely should try and cultivate their own following. And they should try and make a loyal following, and they shouldn't flood their own markets with oversupply and ruin collections. 100% agree with that. But there's no reason these two things can't coexist. And I think it's important they do. And we should be looking at both sides of this coin. It's complicated. So I've got a pretty extensive background in royalty payments and different creative licenses from my time as a photographer, and it's a messy area that I thought I was leaving behind, but has followed me into Web3. I've spent years writing about court cases with different licenses and royalties not paid, and it's a nightmare. It's really messy, but we'll come back to the CC0 and stuff, the different licenses. In terms of what people said, so what I didn't realize until just before this podcast is people have been describing what Sudoswap are doing as a race to the bottom, where it's just trying to get fees as low as possible until it's literally unsustainable for everyone that's doing it. And I think that is absolutely correct. I think that's exactly what is happening. And there's a platform called Solana Art that's competing with Eden, and they're now doing 0% market fee, 0% creator fee. And it's just a dreadful idea. I think perhaps that they see it as like when people were creating Facebook and Twitter, and the old school business guys were like, well, how are you making money? We're like, oh, we're not, we're making a loss. We're just getting users. And they were like, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You're never going to make any money. You're doomed. But I don't think it's the same. You can't just get users and you're ruining the market here. It's a marketplace. And to remove, so in our conversation, I perhaps didn't make it clear, but I think there should be a market fee. You're using a service that needs to be secure above all, which is difficult and expensive in Web3, and I mean in Web2, but in Web3 extra difficult and extra expensive. There's hacks happening weekly, and marketplaces are going to get hacked. I mean, it just feels inevitable. So there should definitely be marketplace fees, and I don't applaud a marketplace for removing their fees. I think that's a stupid idea. Yeah. And no creator fee. Well, yeah, that's what the whole episode's about. And I think it's generally a bad idea to remove royalties, but solving the problem is going to take a while. And this could be another one of those episodes where we end going, yeah, well, that's it. We don't know.
Well, I think as a collector, you've got to frame it in this way. If they're not charging me any fees, where are they getting the value from me? Now, if you look at how Facebook rose in 2005, 2006, like I said, they didn't charge anything for you to use the platform. How did they make the money? Well, they sold your data and then advertised everything to you. And for the most part, they still advertise, they follow your cookies and your data, and they will target ads towards you that they think you'll engage with. And I think if you're looking at a marketplace which is saying, hey, we're not going to charge any fees, then I automatically think, well, what are they doing? They have to be doing something to make money, otherwise they wouldn't have a marketplace. They wouldn't be able to keep it running. So what they're doing, are they just using the influx of users that the 0% royalty fee decision has made to kind of sell advertising to third parties? Are they capitalizing on data in any way? There has to be something in it for the marketplace to make these decisions. And in any case, I think the end user is fundamentally worse off with their data being used in ways that might not be, well, let's just say that they're not the best ways from a consumer point of view. Like, we don't want our data to be used in those ways. Not really. I would much rather pay like 2% marketplace fee than have that marketplace then use every single piece of data they have on me to, target me with ads or share with third parties, or to, And I'm not sure what Sudoswap are doing. I've not looked into it, if I'm honest. But I think people who are, diving into Sudoswap and thinking, oh, yeah, I get to save on fees, I would take a good hard look at what else they're getting from you as part of that.
I think they're possibly undermining the people who populate the marketplaces. So by betraying the creators, which they are doing, the creators are, I don't think you want to make enemies of the very people who are creating the products you're selling. Yeah. I mean, Sudoswap isn't quite that, but Solana Art is. They are a marketplace selling art on Solana that is actively trying to hurt the artist. There is a counterpoint to this, I think, which is, I was going to get into this later, but it kind of fits here, about pricing and how artists have traditionally been dreadful at pricing their work.
Yep.
And they don't work out their costs. They don't work out their own value and how long they spent doing something and what they're expecting to get out of it. And if you miscalculate these things, it can be damaging. Mm-hmm. And there's a great story about this, and it's a photography story, but it kind of fits here rather nicely. So you're probably familiar. Oh God, if you're not familiar, I'm going to be so angry. You're probably familiar with the Windows XP image of the green hill with the blue sky.
Yes,
right?
Of course.
God, I didn't know if there was the age gap was going to cause a problem there. I'd been so angry. So that was shot in California by a guy called Chris O'Rear, and he sold that for, it was $100 and something thousand to Microsoft for that. It was six figures. Mm-hmm. Little funny aside is they made that deal, and then it was shot on film because it was like 1996 they did this. Mm-hmm. And it was shot on film, so they needed the physical photo. And when he tried to send it to the Microsoft office in Seattle, FedEx refused it because they said it's too expensive and they thought they'd hurt it or lose it. So he had to fly with it in his hand luggage and deliver it by hand at the Seattle office. Anyway, wow. So that's the most viewed photograph in history, kind of by default.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good photograph, but it got that accolade through unusual means. Mm-hmm. So he earned at least definitely north of $100,000 for that photo.
Yep.
Now, there's another guy who doesn't really get much coverage called Peter Burian, I think it is, or Burian. Mm-hmm. And he took a picture. You probably have seen the picture, but you may not remember it. It's an autumn scene with like a bench and tons of orange leaves. It was taken in America somewhere, and it was one of the alternative backgrounds that you could use for Windows XP.
Okay.
And it has probably been seen several billion times. Except he submitted this image to a stock website, the same stock website where Chris O'Rear had uploaded the image that was used as a Windows XP flagship image. Mm-hmm. So it's the same website, but they used different licenses. And Peter Burian used what's known as royalty free, which is where you don't earn royalties from your image, but they pay a one-time fee.
Yep.
And he earned a total of $45.
Wow.
For that image. So it goes to show how poorly these things can go for you if you don't put thought into it. Not that, I mean, nobody could predict the sort of singularity of being picked up by a operating system that ends up being the most used operating system in history.
Sure.
But the problem is photographers of all kinds and artists are basically the same creatures, and we have been traditionally horrendous at pricing models and working out how to make money out of things. Mm-hmm. And the counter argument to removing royalties is increasing the base price.
Yeah.
But then you end up pricing people away from it. And I just think royalties in general are a better system for the artists. And the royalties we're talking just, they're not that much. Did I read that Beeple set his at 10% originally?
I'm unsure. I know
that is high.
I know he still has obviously creative royalties on all of his NFTs. I'm unsure what they are at the moment, yeah. but yeah.
So I think his was at one point 10%, which is Really, I mean, that is quite high. But the lower fees we're looking at, so I think OpenSea is 2.5%. Is Atomic Hub 2%? 2%, right. And then obviously the collectors can set their own royalty like percentages.
Yep.
But the big ones, nobody really sets them. Nobody's been exploitative with it. Like the big one, Meebits was I think the highest I saw, which was 5%. Mm-hmm. Bored Apes was 2.5%. I mean, these aren't large percentages. I looked at Bored Apes last week. A 7-day average had an average sale, the average sale price of $115,000. So the royalties were $2,875 per sale. There aren't that many sales.
No.
I mean, and this is the pinnacle. We're talking about the pinnacle. Bored Apes are right up there with the most desirable NFT collections. And if you made a handful of sales, that's not crazy money. I mean, it's a lot of money, but not when you think they're in the stratosphere. They are the 1%ers, and they're not earning crazy amounts. And Meebits, their average sale was $5,900. So they're only earning $295 on a 5%. Royalty fee. So I just don't think it's a lot of money, and I don't really understand why people are so against paying it, particularly if you want to support someone.
I think it's I think it's a kind of a trait that's come across from Web 2. It's like, if I can get something for cheaper, I will do. And I mean, I can understand that. I think in general, if I was on Amazon and I was like, hey, I can buy this, I don't know, radio. Who the hell buys a radio in 2022? Anyway, if I could buy
this wireless,
if I could buy it for 50, let's say 45 British pounds, or I could pay £50 for it, but the person who made it gets £5. I don't care. I'd rather get it for £45. You know what I mean? I'd rather save that money. And I think I've seen a couple of creators frame or try and justify high creator royalties on the secondary market by kind of ridiculing those that set it low and saying that they're kind of devaluing their art, or if people aren't happy to pay those fees, then they don't respect the artist. I don't think that's the case at all. I think again, to go back to what people said, you have to give your collectors a reason to want to pay that fee. I mean, on Wax, creator fees can be set anywhere between 0 and 15%. I've seen some creators set them at 15%, and they're fully within their remit to do that. But I don't think they can then complain if they're not getting a lot of secondary market traction, because I can fully understand a collector be like, I don't want to pay a 15% fee to you to get this NFT. I think a creator can charge that if they'd like to, but that doesn't mean a collector has to pay it. And that could directly affect a purchasing decision. I know on Atomic Hub, if you go through our UI, you can only set your creative fee. I think it's between 2% and 6%. You can only do it up to 15 if you go to a block explorer and do it manually. And we as a company did that in the knowledge that, I think we said any creative fee higher than 6% isn't really fair to the purchaser. If Bored Ape were taking 6% of sales over $100,000, then they go from making $2,000 per secondary market transaction to $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. And I think there's fairer ways for a creator to make their living from their art than through that method. But that, again, that's not to say that I agree with what Sudoswap are doing, which is eliminating creator royalties entirely. I think you need to balance, or creators need to balance, what they need to continue doing their art on a full-time basis, or whatever basis they want to do in the NFT space, and what is most fair for their collectors. I don't think, maybe you disagree with me, but I don't think a creator can necessarily say, I'm going to charge a 15% creator royalty fee, and this is a totally fair thing to do. I don't think collectors will necessarily agree with that.
No, I think I can't think of a reason why you would do that, because even if you lowered the fee, the initial sale fee, you're still it just won't resell. I can't. Look, I wouldn't pay. if you imagine doing it on Atomic Hub with 15%, I'm not willing to lose 17% of my sale in fees.
Yep.
And so I definitely don't agree with that. I think there is an argument for a situation in which you could have 0% royalties, and this has been conflated in this debate massively, and that is NFTs with utility, where gaming NFTs, I think having a 10% royalty on a gaming NFT is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be low or nothing, really, if trading is important to that game's ecosystem. If you're moving things often and a high volume of NFTs for a game, it doesn't make sense to have royalties on that. I think that'd be classified as greed, really.
Yeah.
And you want to get that down as low as possible to incentivize people to actually, interact with your NFTs as often as possible, rather than, limiting people. And that has been an area that's been I tell you what, the only person I saw that was discussing this was, hang on, I've got it in my notes. Eden Au at AU. I'm probably butchering that. But he's from The Block, not like Jenny, but the publication. And he called royalties in NFTs a social concept, which I broadly agree with. It just comes back to the Beeple thing. He's right at the moment, because you can circumnavigate it so easily, but I don't think it has to be just a social concept that we have to respect. But what he said is that NFTs with utilities, and I think he was talking about gaming, royalties may disincentivize trading. 100%.
Absolutely.
Couldn't agree with that more. I think that would be a bad way to go. But when it comes to art, typically the art is the only income stream. It is the revenue stream. So they don't have, subscriptions or pack sales or game sales, or, they don't have anything else. They have their art and the resale of their art. Yep. So, or music, or, not just art, it's anything you're creating. So I do think they are distinct.
Yeah. Well, I think for a game, in order for the finances to make sense of them to have low secondary market fees to incentivize trading, you need to sell some sort of access NFT. I'm not saying that's not to say I'm endorsing these ridiculous projects that saying, hey, you need to buy this $2,000 NFT to play this game. But I think for the financials to make sense from a project point of view, let's say if the NFT was $30 to access a game, cool, fine. And then, set a low secondary market cost fees, and that would incentivize trading. I think that's when creators are often talking about the percentage that they're getting from secondary market fees. I think a lot of them fail to take into account the impact on the person selling their NFTs. Like, for example, on Wax, if you can set your creator fee to 15%, if I'm selling one of your NFTs, and let's say you set a 15% creator fee, I'll pay 2% to Wax, I'll pay 2% to the marketplace I use. Then if I sell that NFT for 100 Wax, I'm then only getting about 80 Wax for that. And that makes a lot of the reasons why people buy and trade NFTs, for example, to make a profit. That's that's one of the top reasons people buy and sell NFTs. It makes it all the more harder to do. So it's going to de-incentivize people actively buying into your collection, selling NFTs from your collection. And on the other side, for people wanting to purchase your NFTs as well. They're like, well, hey, I've now got to deal with giving away 20% of the value to this NFT to a third parties. So why would I do that? Around the crypto Twitter, there's been a whole lot of debate on this discussion from a couple of big names. Andrew Wang, who is one of the people behind Devotion XYZ, just put up a tweet saying, how do we feel? And then had some interesting responses. But we had some more in-depth ones for some people in the space. So Matt Medved, who is the founder and the kind of the editor-in-chief for NFT Now, the media site, put out a tweet saying, 0% royalties are a non-starter. We're not going back to Web 2. And then followed it up with a tweet saying artists deserve to be paid in perpetuity. I think in the way he's framing that argument, and what NFT Now covers the most, is art NFTs. And I think on that basis, I completely agree with him. I think it does get more complicated when you talk about games. I don't think it was necessarily including those in his statement, though. Drift, who lately has just been, he advises on a load of NFT projects, but lately he's just been taking pictures of himself on top of bridges around the world, but that's beside the point. He just put out a tweet saying 0 royalties, D's nuts. So I think it's very clear on what his thoughts are. I need to mention this because it's one of my favourite bands. Sinister Gates, who is the guitarist for Avenged Sevenfold, who, funny enough, have a 10,000 piece PFP project on ETH, wrote a tweet saying he agreed. Gave his reasoning for that. But
he agreed in 0%.
Sorry. So Drift was saying 0 royalties, D's nuts, as in I disagree.
Oh, right. He replied to that.
Yeah, he replied to that being like, okay, yeah, I agree with this statement, blah, blah, blah. And the best comment I saw was from Degentraland, who is a kind of a industry kind of commentator. He holds a Bored Ape, he holds a doodle. And his tweet was simply, this 0% creator royalties conversation is the dumbest news cycle ever. Go enjoy your weekends. Which is...
a lot of people are blunt on this.
Yeah, it's driven up a lot of heated opinions on either side, and I think he was just trying to defuse the situation, let's say. But I think he's kind of got a point. I mean, if people... Sudoswap has seen increased traction lately, but nothing to break the fundamentals of Web3. I think if Sudoswap continues to not get any traction, it's not as big of an issue as I think some people are making it out to be.
Yeah, I want to play devil's advocate because that's fun. I'm not sure I believe in this at all. I really am just playing devil's advocate. So I've earned royalties. I've had royalty contracts. I had a contract. My longest standing contract was one with the California greetings card company that used a picture of my mum's poodle. In a get well card. I put it in a rain mac and then sprayed it with a hose. It's okay. He was a good dog. He liked water. It's fine. And basically they put it on a get well soon card, and that sold for years, and I earned royalties off it. But the reason I'm bringing this up is the reason that I earned royalties was because the image I'd created was being used for a purpose, and the purpose was making someone money. That's why I was getting paid in royalties. Yeah. With art, it isn't being used it isn't being used to make money. It's being enjoyed. Yeah. And it's difficult to think of another example outside of the arts where you create something for just, use, but not to make money from it. Yeah. And resales generate royalties. If I made a handmade sofa and sold that on Etsy, I'm not getting any money the next time that sofa goes on Facebook Marketplace. So I'm not sure where I sit on this. It just occurred to me, and I fancied playing devil's advocate for a bit. In photography, royalties has traditionally been, or how most people have earned royalties, is when people are using things to make money. So, for example, Bored Apes just gave away all creative control, and so the owner of that Bored Ape can just use it for whatever they want. If that had been a slightly different contract where wherever you use it, you have to pay a certain amount of your profits back to them, that would be a more traditional royalty contract, although that's a bit open because you could use it for anything. But, if it was narrower, it would make more sense. But what I feel like there's something I'm not quite getting with why art deserves to have royalties always on resales. Now, I support I've got a background in the arts, so I support the artists, and I really am playing devil's advocate. I want artists to prosper in Web3, and I think they're very important to it. Yeah. But I don't think it's an unfair point to say you don't need it, price better, and then don't have any resale fees and royalties on resale fees.
I think it's a very fair point. I think ultimately, it should be down to the creator. I know a lot of creators will be like, yeah, of course I want to earn fees. But if for whatever reason they want to set it to 0% or happy with a marketplace not giving them their fees, and they should be able to say so. I think that's what most people's problem with Sudoswap is they don't need any consent from the artists themselves to not give them any creator fee. which is fundamentally against what most people's understanding of the ethos of Web3 is, in that everybody
100%.
gets paid fairly, creators get paid fairly for their work, they get fair royalties, blah, blah, blah. And circumventing that is, it strikes at the heart of what blockchain technology and this culture is supposed to be about. I think what I'll add to that is if you look at all the big blue chip collections nowadays, your Bored Apes, your Punks, your Doodles, etc. A lot of those didn't initially sell for 50 ETH, 60 ETH. A lot of them sold for 0.08 or like 0.1 ETH or comparatively low amounts of money. And I don't think they, in their wildest dreams, could have thought that these collections were going to now have a market cap of, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. So I think I wouldn't, and I think when those NFTs first came out, if they're like, hey, here's a picture of a monkey, pay me $150,000 for it, people would have told them to get lost. But it's the culture and it's the community and the way that they've cultivated a kind of a following and an element of coolness around these assets that's given them this value. And I think that's where a lot of artists, especially coming into the Web3 space, don't really understand valuation. A lot of the value behind art NFTs in particular is usually nothing at all to do with the art. It's 95% or more to do about, well, if not the utility, which, let's be fair, is a fairly sizable percentage of this when it comes to Bored Apes and Doodles, etc., is the culture behind those communities. There was a tweet from Decentraland, I think earlier this week, and that was something along the lines of the two things he looks for in any upcoming or brand new NFT collection is strong culture and VC backing from like reputable VCs. And if a project has those two things, then it's going to do well. And if it doesn't, then it won't. I think that's fundamentally, that's the one thing that creators need to focus on when it comes to their NFTs. They need to develop a good culture. If you develop a good culture, then your assets go up in value. Then you can lower your creator fees, for example, but you'll still be fairly paid if your assets have an increased floor price. Or, and we can get on to this in a second, is the CC0 licensing standard, which has, I believe, helped to kind of, let's say, shore up the floor prices for all these blue chip collections that are choosing CC0. So hang on, let's just get into it now. So Yuga Labs, who own Bored Apes and recently acquired CryptoPunks, they have a CC0 license on those two collections. I know there's a few other NFT collections that have it as well, but those are the two biggest ones. What is CC0? So that is, what it effectively means is no copyright reserved. So if you purchase a Bored Ape, for example, you can do whatever you like with it. You don't need the permission of Yuga Labs. You don't need to pay them any kind of fee. If you want to take that Bored Ape that you own and create, mugs with that Bored Ape on, or sell merch, or create a game based around that ape, or do anything else creatively with that Bored Ape, you can do it without the Yuga Labs team being able to do anything about it. And we've seen with Bored Apes, some people in the community do incredible things with the apes that they own. Off the top of my head, you've got people like Jenkins the Valet, who has written a book, and also has this metaverse project he's building on, and a few other things he's working on that are basically just all based around this ape that he owns. We have Bored Ape Wear, which is a merchandise company that's basically just spoken to a number of ape holders and licensed the apes that they hold to sell merch. We have, was it Seth Green who owned a Bored Ape and was going to make a TV show about it, and then it got stolen? Oh, so there was something like that. I think it was the NFL. Was it the NFL? It was some sort of American sports league that has they now have a Bored Ape player, or they signed a Bored Ape. I didn't read into it. I'm not quite sure how that works, but that was only able to be done because the holder of that ape was able to go and create that arrangement with MLB and didn't have to go and ask Yuga for permission. And I think CC0's rather, give the holders of NFTs a lot of creative power, and in fairness, a way for them to make an earning off of the NFT that they hold. This is, in the case of Bored Ape, is very beneficial to Yuga, because if the holders of Bored Apes are creating all these little side projects and all these cool metaverses and other things they're doing, then it helps give Bored Apes in general, it shores up their value. It's like, these are valuable assets. People are making sorts of really cool side projects with them. And there was some interesting comments on Twitter around that when it came to the announcement that CryptoPunks were going to become a CC0. One of the most kind of virulent ones in opposition was from Pranksy, who is a fairly well-known kind of artist and commentator. I'm just going to quote his tweet. He said, so what exactly is the point of owning an NFT under a CC0 license compared to, say, having it right-clicked and saved on my PC? I don't even want to get into that point. He said, I want my ownership represented either under commercial or personal use rights. I don't want, for example, extremist groups using it and having no grounds to fight. And then Fubar, who is another fairly well-known industry commentator, replied with, blockchains are fundamentally censorship resistant. Imagine thinking that censorship/IP is a natural state of things. Quote, what's the point of my NFT if I can't sue people, end quote, is so out of touch with crypto ethos, I'm not sure where to start. I kind of get where Pranksy is coming from. Let's say worst case scenario for Yuga Labs, if somebody bought a Bored Ape and had intends to use it for nefarious purposes, Yuga doesn't have any recourse to stop that under a CC0 license. So I completely agree with what Pranksy's saying, but I also agree with Fubar in that it does seem, again, non-crypto, non-Web3 for a central entity, in this case Yuga, to dictate how their NFTs be used. It's a very difficult conversation to unpack because there's so many things that affect this. It's the effect this has on the creator, the effect this has on the price of the assets, the effect it has on the holders and the value of the NFTs that they have, possible nefarious uses of NFTs held under a CC0 license. I've just spewed a lot of words at you. So what is your general kind of macro level thinking around CC0s?
So CC0s are complicated. They became popular in photography rather unexpectedly because people saw that they were a strong way of getting brand, and by brand I mean the photographer, exposure, and that it would often lead to paid work. I haven't seen any real evidence for that, but that's why it was popular and still is popular in photography. Stock websites used to be a way you could make steady income. I was a Getty photographer, and I used to make money through Getty. Mm-hmm. And it got less and less and less, and then I just gave up. And I know a lot of people that have done that. Stock imagery, free stock. I mean, you and I both use Unsplash, which they're actually morally not great, or they don't have a great history morally. But Pexels, Pexels is another one. So there was a few things I thought while you're talking. Firstly, before I forget this, your counterpoint to royalties for artists and me saying, should they get it? And you brought up the price increase of NFTs. I think that's a great counterpoint for because it's like a hedge against the volatility of crypto. So I thought that was a really, really strong point with NFTs particularly. And at the moment, I think that makes perfect sense. Anyway, I just didn't want to forget that. So CC0s, I'm going to ask you some questions because there's some things I don't. I'm just holding my lens cap. I don't know why I'm doing that. So there's some things I don't understand about CC0 with Bored Apes. Okay. So CC0, unless I'm mistaken, and I didn't think I was, but CC0 means public domain. It means you're waiving your right to copyright. So you are putting your work into the public domain.
Yes.
Now this this has typically been used by things of historic relevance, cultural relevance. Libraries often do it with huge collections of work, particularly art museums do it, so that people can see and enjoy huge bodies of work for free.
Yeah.
Now, we keep saying, and I've been saying this as well because I was under this illusion, that the owner of the Bored Ape can do what they want with it.
Yes.
But if it's CC0, anyone can do what they want with it.
Yes. So as I understand it, and I might be wrong, if I am incorrect, and somebody please reach out to me after this podcast and let me know. But Yuga Labs has put Bored Apes under a CC0, which means they effectively relinquish all of their rights to how Bored Apes can be used.
Mm-hmm.
However, every one of the 10,000 Bored Apes is an NFT, and each one of them has an owner. Therefore, the owner of that Bored Ape can choose to license it and use it however he wants. Ergo, if a third party was to take a Bored Ape that is held by somebody else, they are within their remit to go after that person and prevent it from being used. That's my understanding. I might be wrong, but I believe that's the case.
Well, you're right on. With a CC0, you can change the license, so someone can. Well, no, it's complicated actually because with the CC0, let's say I took the photo of Monty, the poodle, that was getting rained on. Let's say I put that up under CC0 on Pexels, and you downloaded it, and you decided to Photoshop his yellow rain Mac to a red rain Mac for your brand, and you could then, under CC0, you could then change the license of the red Mac picture to whatever you want. You could have a full creative control.
Yep.
Now, what I don't understand, or do I? Maybe I do understand it. This is complicated. So this is one of the reasons that I really did want CC licenses coming in, because there's a ton. CC0 is one of about 7.
Yeah.
There's and they all have slightly different things about whether you can publish it, whether attribution is required, whether you can use it for commercial use, whether you can modify it, whether you can change licenses, things like that. So CC0 is the only one where you can basically do whatever the hell you want and no one can do anything about it. Mm-hmm. So the owner of the NFT, I don't understand how they have any say, like why I can't, not that I agree with that guy that was saying right click save, but why I couldn't right click save his NFT and make a t-shirt. That guy that did the merch, I don't understand why he couldn't just do all the Bored Apes, because they haven't modified anything. They haven't changed it. Yeah. This is where my confusion is. Yeah.
And I don't entirely think I have the answer to this.
Yeah, I don't expect you to. I'm just talking through my.
What I think is a lot of the Yuga's use CC0's, and I think there's a couple of other projects that have used CC0's as well. But I don't think what CC0 actually allows you to do, and what these companies like Yuga are actually wanting from the license are one and the same. I actually think they probably should create a new license standard for these images, which is like the holders of these NFTs can do whatever they like. But as far as I understand it, there isn't a Creative Commons license relating to who owns NFTs at this point. But as I understand it, that's how Yuga are intending to use it. It's, hey, holders of these NFTs can use Bored Ape imagery however they like, but people who aren't holders can't. But that's not what
that sounds like. No, that's royalty free. Yeah. That's royalty free. That's what they did with the Microsoft image. Mm-hmm. You pay a one-time fee and you get complete creative control over that image. I've sold images royalty free, and that. But then you'd be calling it royalty free, but the royalties are set at 2.5%. So it's not. This is so messy, but this is the discussion we need to have. This is interesting, and creative. I mean, it's honestly creative. There's a lot we do not want to bring over to Web3 with these creative licenses. I can tell you categorically, I have seen everything and reported on a number of things in photography, particularly like 5-10 years ago when I was writing very regularly about the legal side of photography. Mm-hmm. And I wrote, you know what, I'm gonna do a little boast here. I wrote it wasn't really it wasn't intended as an educational piece, but it was kind of similar in scope. It was a very large piece on copyright and plagiarism in photography. Okay. And that's now on a photography syllabus in a university in the US. So I've spent a long time boring myself with this stuff, and it is boring, just for the record.
Oh, of course.
Very, very boring. But it's such a messy area that people don't know what to do with it. And the legal cases are like flipping a coin. Sometimes you think, well, that's a dead cert. The artist has been wronged, and they rule against them. And then sometimes they award damages, and you think, well, what? Like, you gave away most of your copyright, and now you're kicking up a fuss, and somehow you've won. And we've seen that there's also really messy things with. You may not have seen this, but there was an amazing, this is kind of off the point, but I don't care, it's coming in. There was an amazing legal case in photography in the US that lasted a couple of years, where a guy for National Geographic set up a tripod in the jungle, and a monkey went up to the camera that was on the tripod and pressed the shutter and took a picture of himself. And it went to court over whether the monkey owned the photograph or he did, because he didn't take it. And this, like, it was a long court case. And in fact, the ruling, they appealed the ruling twice, or so. It lasted forever. Mm-hmm. But this is how messy copyright can get. And I really think we want to avoid as much as possible and keep it either completely open or completely closed in terms of what we do with NFTs. I don't want to see 7 different CC licenses, because it's a nightmare. So I've had a maximum of like 80 writers working under me at any one time, and each writer is writing about photography, and they're using images. I'm constantly having to check whether they've got the permission to use it, and they have to now submit written permission. And then there's the whole fair use thing, which we're not going into on this podcast because I can't. Oh, look, there's a button that says mark clip. Maybe I can mark this. You can bleep it out. It's click. Yeah, I marked it. There you go. You can bleep that out. Perfect. I love Riverside. Yeah, fair use is just another way of circumnavigating copyright, and it's just crazy. But these CC0 licenses and NFTs, I'm gonna need somebody with some like real expertise in the subject to unpack it for me, because right now it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what owning the NFT changes unless it's a royalty-free license, not CC0.
Yeah.
And then it makes sense, because, well, apart from the bit where you're getting royalties, this is awful.
I think the whole, and I agree with you, we're not going to discuss it in this podcast. It could be probably 2, 3, 4 different podcasts in and of itself. But the issue of fair use in the art of NFTs is difficult, and it's one that I've discussed this week with someone on the Atomic Hub team. It's a topic we've discussed and beaten to death over the last couple of months, is what exactly consists of fair use.
Yeah.
I can't speak for other marketplaces, but I know of at least 2 examples in the wax space where IP holders have gone after NFT collections and said, hey, you need to take this down. And the creator has thought that they had fair use to create the NFT that they've used. Whenever
anyone uses fair use, presume it isn't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's the quickest. It's the safest and quickest route. Just presume it isn't, because the courts can't even decide. UK and US law cannot decide what fair use is, and there's been so many cases. Not even with fair use, but people creating things inspired by other things has been a nightmare. And there's again, I'm not going to get into all of this, but there was a court case where this woman created a very famous series of pictures of babies, the creepiest thing you've ever seen in your life. But someone basically copied it, and then copied her style, and then created stuff and sold it. And she lost in court, even though it was blatantly ripping someone else off. So the whole thing's a nightmare, and I don't want it ported over to Web3 en masse. I think we need to prune it on its way through.
Yeah, no, I mean, fingers crossed. As I said, when it comes to Creative Commons licenses, that like something comes across that's like that expressly states NFT holders can do such and such, rather than a complete, well, what CC0 says, which is relinquishing all copyright and similar rights to imagery, which isn't how Yuga and other businesses.
No, it's not public domain.
Or intended. Yeah, exactly. And I think the term CC0 has kind of been conflated in that within the NFT space, different people have completely different ideas of what it means, because they either are unfamiliar with it being used in cases before NFTs, or just assume it means what Yuga and other people have intended it to be used for.
Wait, could I just had a thought, and I should probably say this off air because we might be able to make millions. But could you buy a Bored Ape, slightly recolor it, and then sell it on as NFTs as like a break off? Presumably you can. Why couldn't you? And change the license so that you have complete creative control, so no one can ever do the same to your NFT. I mean, why couldn't you? That's
an interesting idea. I mean, I know that
less Bored Apes.
I know that
slightly amused apes. Sorry, go on.
Yuga have gone to court with I can't remember the name of the guy, but the guy who's doing all the Nazi accusations at the moment. I think he used to be. I don't know if he used to be Hold or not, but he created basically like one of those duplicate ape collections, and then Yuga took legal proceedings against him, being like, "Hey, you shouldn't be making derivatives of our NFT." So I know in some ways Yuga are trying to protect the rights that they have over there. But again, this is exactly. This is such a difficult legal.
What rights? They don't have any anymore.
If they have a CC0 license, then what license do they have to protect the image? We need.
You could. CC0 says you can in fact, there's a lot of CC licenses, not even just CC0. There are a lot of CC licenses that say you can modify and adapt artworks. So I imagine you could create what? I don't know. Maybe it is distinct.
Does that allow you to sell derivatives though, or is it just to own and create?
Well, that would come under commercial use, and that's a yes, allegedly. We really need a solicitor.
Yeah, we need some sort of Web3 legal expert on this podcast, if there are any out there. So, I mean, if you're listening and you know someone, please let us know.
We'll do a follow-up episode because we're confused here.
We should definitely do one. But I think the kind of the point of why we brought these two topics up. I mean, one, what Sudoswap are doing, and both the CC0 rather. Topics are kind of, they're being widely talked about in the NFT space at the moment. And I think it's important to bring them up. But I think from a creator point of view, I mean, as we said on the 0%, or, I'm not sure what your opinions on this are, Rob, but on the 0% thing, I think it's very important for creators to build a community that values not just their work, but themselves. Even if the artist is anonymous, and there are some very big pseudonymous artists in the NFT space, but what they do is still very valued. And I think different subsects of creators have a different idea of exactly what we value art more now means in Web3. Some of them think it's, hey, I can use any avenues at my disposal to get the funds that I believe are fair recompense for my work, whether that's on the initial sale or in perpetuity. Whilst for others, it's like, well, hey, I want to make it fair for my collectors, but I still want to get, a little, 1%, 2% here and there, which just helps to support me and my work. I think over time, there'll be a more general consensus of what the Web3's attitudes as a whole are towards that topic. But for now, it's a lot of entrenched camps shouting at each other over Twitter, which doesn't help anybody.
Shocker.
But with CC0, I mean, it's a viable option for any NFT collection, but I think with the discussion we've just had, we don't even understand exactly what
I'm not sure.
No. So, but I think it is important to bring up that I think that's a format of utility that I've seen within blue chips. I think other collections could also be utilizing. There's some very cool art-based collections on Wax, and the artist in those cases have the full rights behind their images. And let's say if somebody wanted to create a T-shirt with the NFT that they hold on it, that creator or the artist is fully within their rights to sue the hell out of them. But I think I do think it's an area of untapped potential for good artists, or even artists that create something that is starts becoming widely recognized in the NFT space. I think it's an interesting way to add value to your collection in a way that you don't really have to do anything yourself as a creator. You're just saying, hey, you take the NFT that you own, go do whatever the hell you want with it. I endorse you doing this. I think there's a lot of collectors that would jump at that. Just talk about some of the NFTs. I mean, I've been increasingly getting into ETH lately. There's a collection called Lonely Pop, who for something that's going to happen in a couple of weeks' time, and I don't want to get too much into it at the moment, but I'm going to be using that NFT, the Lonely Pop NFT I own, to represent me on a different medium. And I let the team know that, and they're like, yeah, that's really cool. By the way, our collection's under CC0, so, you didn't even need our permission, but thank you for letting us know. But I think there's so much opportunity. Let's say on Wax, I got my blockchain brawler. Let's say I could take my blockchain brawler and create a shirt, or create a stuffed toy, or create, I don't know if Wax Studios would do that, but for small, let's say it's Alien Worlds or Our Planet or Colonize Mars or, cat stickers or Mikey Mike or Corporate World or any of these other amazing artists. I think there's so much value you can give to your collectors by giving them the permission to do whatever the hell they want with the NFTs that they own. I can understand the reticence from people like Pranksy, which is like, hey, it could be used for nefarious reasons. But I think if we were to adopt that way of thinking towards, I was going to say anything in the NFT space, but I think life in general, we wouldn't do a lot of the things that, are really cool. And I think, Web3 is built on the foundations of being, an open, transparent, collaborative space where, it's, everybody gets fairly recompensed for what they do, and ultimately gives everyone a lot of opportunity, whether you're a creator, a collector, an artist, someone making games. And I think through licenses such as CC0's, let's not say CC0 specifically, there's expanded horizons of opportunity out there, and I think it's worth creators exploring those options for their communities.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that creating a following that values you as the artist is important. I think what Bored Apes did with their CC0, not CC0 license has worked fantastically for the record. And I think it did free advertising in a way that you couldn't ever afford to have done. The problem with giving up rights, however, is that not only can things be used for nefarious reasons, for example, imagine what those guys would have said if you'd emailed them about the NFT you bought and you were like, I'm just getting this printed on my right-wing flag for our march on Sunday. Just thought I'd let you know that they've got no, I don't know what their license is, but they might have no recourse, and they're like, okay. And then imagine it starts to be associated with that sort of thing. And it can get you into a really sticky situation. There's another photography example, which, because that's all I have to hand, is there was a girl who did a photo shoot with a photographer, and the photographer, it was just a blonde girl just standing there, nice picture, and he just took the picture and then he put it up so he got her to sign a model release, so he had full creative control and rights over the image, and then he sold it to an HIV campaign, and they were using her image for HIV awareness. So people naturally who saw her might have recognized her from the HIV advert, and suddenly, so signing away your rights can be dangerous in ways you might not have anticipated. And also, I think Bored Apes has got a very strong brand, even though it's quite diffuse. They have a strong brand, and there's going to be a ton of rubbish that's not on brand that's being created, and you just hope they don't get popular, because it can do damage to your brand. But so far, they've been a good example of how it can go right. I do worry for the smaller artists where it might go wrong, and also you might not earn from it being used in ways that goes very right. So I think you've got twice the risk, because if it gets, imagine, Universal Records did a label with your NFTs, and that's the only cool thing that happened. Like maybe you did a collection of 10 and they bought all 10 and they use it for something like that, and you're going to get nothing other than the initial fee. And there's a lot of ways for it to go wrong. So I would be careful. But yeah, I said this would happen. We're getting to the end of the episode and I'm like, yeah, I mean, there's some wrong, some right. We don't know what to do. We also no longer, I felt like I had a strong understanding of CC0. Now I don't know. I don't know if NFTs are just different. Yeah.
I know that within the NFT space, everyone's always saying, oh, we're early. we're early, and everyone says it like it's a positive thing. But when it comes to topics like this and other such topics that we've discussed on this podcast, it's nothing but a pain in the neck because nobody knows what's right and what's wrong. And when the Web3 and NFT space becomes more established, we will know these things, but we don't yet, and we're not in a position to tell people what is right and what is wrong. It is absolutely something that we'll keep an eye on and we'll talk about, in perpetuity. But right now, it's difficult, and we can give you pockets of advice, and we can discuss the topic as a whole. But I think at the end of the day, whether you're a creator, collector, whoever you are, you need to make your own mind up about, your approach to whether or not you support 0% creator fees, whether or not you support CC0 licenses or other types of licenses. And we can just be a platform for you to keep these or consider these things along with us. And please, if you have any opinions on what we've discussed on this episode, then let us know, either on either of our Discords or wherever you can find us, or on Twitter, on the new account, at Mint1Pod. Just before we get into the outros, this is the second time I'm going to reference this YouTube video on pod. We talked briefly about fair use. I think we need to do an episode on it at some point. At the moment, Saskia, who is one of the writers and the owner of the Cat Stickers collection, is writing an article for NFT Insider about, with our current understanding of the copyright and fair use landscape, what you can and cannot create in an NFT sense, like what you as an artist, as a creator, can create as an NFT, what you can't create as an NFT, what you can sell, what you can't sell, etc. And I think it'd be interesting as something to unpack in future. But anyway, back to the video. Tom Scott's British YouTuber did a fantastic video on the just how convoluted and bizarre the copyright sphere is, and legally where people's footing is. I'll link it in the show notes. It's 45 minutes long, but if you're in any way a creator that does not understand copyright or does not understand what you can and cannot do, it's well worth the watch. Yeah.
I know what video you're referring to. Yeah, it's a very good watch. And also just to throw in, because I've been really anti-fair use in this podcast, fair use, unfortunately, is also very important. And we do need it for lots of things. Like when you see a YouTuber talking about, like perhaps they'll look at a game that someone's played, or like a trailer, or these people that there was, oh my God, Every Frame a Painting. It's a YouTube channel that's now dead, but basically they went through the most cinematic shots in film history, and they couldn't do that without fair use. They wouldn't have been able to show the clips they're talking about. So fair use is important, but when people are using it, and they would make money off that channel, so you could say it's for commercial use, so it's complicated. But then, taking a Star Wars character, making an NFT and selling it and expecting to keep all the money is naive. So Saskia, you're going to have to shoot some of those people down.
But I think, as you said, there's a lot of artists coming to do. To be fair, there's a lot of artists that have come into NFTs who are fully clued up on copyright and the correct way to do things. There's also a lot of first timers and a lot of chancers and a lot of people that have done hobbyist graphic design things who have no idea about copyright and fair use and all the rest of it. And anyway, we will get into it at another date. I feel like it could be one of those episodes that's 2.5 hours long, and we end it just ruining the idea of doing the podcast in the first place.
Tired and confused. Yeah.
But I think, we'll revisit that in due course. But there you go. That was episode 35. Got it right this time of Mint One. I think even though we've got no solid answers, I think it was a good discussion. I hope it's given you some things to think about. Whatever your stance in the Web3 space is. So, Rob, where can we find you?
You can find me on tokengamer.io, where we upload daily blockchain gaming content. Then at Token Gamer News on Twitter, where we talk about daily blockchain gaming content, as well as some other things. And I'll throw a GIF here and there because, that's my second language, is speaking in GIF. We have the Wax Companion app, which is on iOS and Android and has push notifications when you make sales. You might have seen it. Wax tweeted about it this week, which is very nice of them. And we're very happy with that. And it got some updates coming to it. We also have the projects I've not really been able to talk about is finally going to start rolling out, which is, this isn't its name, but it was called Project Wax Account because we're not creative. and it's essentially a tool for looking at in-depth wax analytics, a little bit like in our app, but much, much bigger scale.
Okay.
So a little bit like blocks, you can explore a lot of things to do with your account, but we want to make it as user-friendly as possible. Anyway, that's going to be rolling out soon. So if you're in our Discord, we're going to be pinging people for testers and testing, which we will, I'm sure, reward people with. Report people with NFTs. I didn't finish that sentence. The wheels are coming off.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Where else can you find me? I don't know. Next week, you can find me in Cologne with John
yes.
at Gamescom. So that's going to be something.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. I think I'm not there for the weekend. I think I'm there Thursday to late Friday, I believe. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's the first Gamescom post-pandemic. I think they're expecting over 300,000 people. I know that there's some large studios that supposedly are having some big announcements there during the week, so it's going to be fun. And I believe it is going to be the first Gamescom where I think there's going to be a few people talking about NFTs and blockchain games and Web3. So
yeah, there's a bigger Web3 presence than I thought. Like I'm setting up a load of meetings. I'm on this app that Josh from CC0's introduced me to, and it's like Tinder for business, and you're just setting up these little business dates that are half an hour windows, and I'm getting a ton of requests from people in Web3. So there's a lot of people there. Immutable are there. I think Polygon are there. Josh is obviously there. There's tons of big and small names, NFT collections, marketplaces. There's a lot of stuff, and a lot of people on this app, you can tick things you're interested in. As in, people can approach you because they work in certain areas. So you can say, I'm looking for a publisher for my game. If you're a publisher, come meet with me. And there was a section for blockchain, and you'd be surprised how many people ticked blockchain.
Interesting.
Including, I've got meetings with some companies that they've not mentioned it publicly yet. So I think it's going to be exciting for that. I'm there from Tuesday till Saturday. So we'll have some overlap, and we'll try and weave in a podcast live at, well, not live, but we could do live, but at Cologne.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where can people find you, John?
So for the latest NFT news, you can head to nftinsider.io. Uploads have been a bit sparse this week because I've been out and about in areas with poor internet connections, let's say, but we're getting back on track, and we have some interesting things coming up, some interviews, some reviews, some news pieces, some analysis, all sorts of little bits and bobs. I think your piece on digital sharecropping is coming up this week as well.
Nice.
Very, very intriguing read, let's say.
I'm still petrified about that. Just as a little aside, I once had, I wrote on digital sharecropping in the photography sector, shocker. And I had one person who was like, you can't use the word sharecropping even with digital in front of it because it references like slavery and like oppression. And they were really upset that I was trying to repurpose a word with such a dark history. And I didn't coin it, by the way. Someone else did. I was just using the term. But now I'm a bit worried. Now I'm still worried that someone's going to be like, I can't believe you'd be so insensitive. Anyway, I just thought I'd voice that concern. So now I've probably tripled the chance of that happening.
I suppose we'll see when that article goes live. But yeah, all sorts of exciting things to look forward to on nftinsider.io. But our socials, it's at nftinsider_io on Twitter and Instagram. Also now on TikTok. We haven't published any TikToks yet, but there you go. You can go follow us there in anticipation of some TikToks. Giveaways, daily tweets about what's going on in space, etc., etc. You know this by now. For me personally, it's at Hydropowered, HYDROPWRD on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse, TikTok, other platforms of note. Again, Twitter is the best place for me. Daily tweets on kind of the state of the space, my thoughts, safety stuff. I've definitely tweeted about Sudoswap and CC0's as well, so you can get some further thoughts from me on that there. And yeah, there's an awful lot going on. some of which I have talked about in terms of articles and things to look out for, but some of which I can't just yet. But in due course, of course, I'll let you guys know. But that is everything from me.
Nice. Okay. Well, I'm going to try and do the exit. I've got to do this. I've got to master this exit, because I don't know if you've seen like my YouTube videos. Oh yeah, we're on YouTube, Token Gamer. Look us up. We do YouTube stuff. At the end, I'm like, okay, that's I'm done. Bye. I don't know how to do it. So right, let's try this. Let's try this. No matter what, this is staying in. Even if I tell you, you got to cut it. You got to keep this in. Okay.
Sure.
Here we go. Oh, this is terrible already. Okay, that's all from us, guys, and hopefully you'll tune in next week. We've been the Mint One Podcast. Rob and John, thank you and good night. Bye.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
Please cut that.
It's not bad. Not bad at all.
I can't do the radio voice. You go into a radio voice.
I don't know how.
I can't do that.
I don't know how I've obtained that. It's just...
No, I've never mastered the radio voice.